Okay, we're going live,
Mhm.
and here we are now, live, streaming live for everyone. This is Our Freedom Teachings, our 234th 234 conversation and teaching, and we are gonna start today. We are gonna cover different sections on the show, but the first one, the main one, is what gardening does to your body, the wonders of gardening and what it does to your body. And then we're gonna talk about some Taoist stuff maybe and some spicy stuff at the end. And so it's gonna be a great show. This is Julian Katari, and the research here is presented to you by Blue Hand Woman, who prepares all this research and all this information for you folks every week so that you can approach freedom with this information. So here we are, and welcome. So you can take it off. Go ahead.
Yeah. So every time we pull a weed or we plant something, we're doing quantum mechanics because the electron transfers that happen between our skin and the soil are at scales where classical physics breaks down. A process called quantum tunneling governs how electrons move between the molecules at the atomic boundary of our bodies and the earth. So our body is exchanging atoms with the soil, atoms that will outlast us by billions of years. And this is kind of the farce of religion telling us we were cast out of the garden, so nobody wants to garden anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So gardening is not a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only activity where we're actually rehearsing what happens after death. Our skin sheds roughly 30,000 dead cells every hour that we spend outside. And those cells, if we're in the country, are falling on the most biologically active substance on the surface of the earth. They do not disappear. They enter a system that is turning them into something else, into soil, into roots, into the food growing. And the exchange runs in both directions. So this whole religious farce of we were cast out of the garden and the Garden of Eden left to go to heaven is just bullshit. And so our dead cells, these 30,000 cells that we shed every hour we're outside, carry our DNA, our unique skin bacteria, our volatile organic compounds, and they land on the most biologically dense substance of the planet, the surface, right? A single teaspoon of healthy garden or forest soil contains between 100 million and 1 billion bacteria. And these aren't scattered randomly. They're organized into structures, into communities, into bacterial colonies, into fungal networks, protozoa grazing on bacteria the way cows and goats graze on grass, and nematodes and mites and springtails that are visible only with microscopes.
Mm-hmm.
So there are more living organisms in that 1 teaspoon of soil than there are humans on the face of this earth.
Mm-hmm.
So our dead cells enter the system the way a leaf enters it when it falls from the tree as raw material, as food. And so the first thing to go is the cell membrane. And this membrane is called the phospholipid bilayer. And that's the first thing that is released, is phosphorus. So remember, we talked a few weeks ago, a couple months to maybe 3 months ago, about the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, fertilizer scam. So the first thing we do is give our phosphorus. So we're fertilizing our garden as we work it. So from our cell walls comes the phosphorus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's dismantled so that the plant roots can absorb it. And then next is our DNA, the nitrogen-rich helix. It gets dismantled. First phosphorus and then nitrogen from us, right? And it's mineralized into ammonium by soil bacteria and then into nitrate. So what last week was part of the genetic code of our skin is now part of the soil that plant roots can absorb.
Mm-hmm.
The carbon that was part of your skin an hour ago when you're gardening is metabolized and incorporated into the soil's biomass also. Some is respired as carbon dioxide and returned to the atmosphere, and some is converted into the humic substances, which cause the humus, that dark, stable, organic matter that gives healthy soil its rich color and smell. And every single one of us who's turned a spade of healthy soil knows that smell. And most of us know it, though, as the smell of rain on dry ground. That smell is caused by a bacteria, by a compound called geosinin, and our noses detect that at very low concentration. We're more sensitive to this compound than to any other molecule on Earth. So when we smell that, we are smelling the metabolic output of organisms that, among other things, are processing ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the carbon cycle operating at the scale of our body. The atoms that were part of our skin this morning are now part of the microbial community this afternoon. Within weeks, some of those atoms will be incorporated into the root systems of the plant, drawn up into their stems and leaves and fruit. So within 3 months, the carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus atoms that we shed in the soil could be in the tomato we're going to pick and eat. So our body is not just in the garden, it is becoming the garden continuously every time we are there. The network our carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus travel through is older than anything we've ever touched. Because underneath every garden meadow or forest floor, every patch of grass is a physical network of fungal threads. Each one is thinner than a human hair and extends in every direction, connecting plant roots across meters and sometimes across tens of meters and even hundreds of meters. This is a mycelium network, and it is the oldest communication system on the planet. When we push a shovel into our garden or use a rototiller or use a plow, we're severing hundreds of millions of those threads. But when we plant a seedling, a plant we bought, and push it into the soil and press soil around its roots, we're connecting that plant to the network that's underground. So imagine filming your garden through a single season and playing back only the footage from underground and speeding it up so that we can see the living web constantly extending, branching, connecting, and breaking where our shovels or our tools cut it and regrowing. We would see our skin cells falling into this web. We would see our atoms moving through the system and up into the stems and fruit hanging in the August sun. In that time lapse, the boundary between us and the garden would be invisible because all we'd see would be our atoms moving through the network. Through the biodynamic of decomposition, the thermodynamic of decomposition and growth, which the decomposition, the destructive cycle, is very much the masculine. Feminine grows, she's fertile and she grows. And so when we talk about 5 element theory, the decomposition, the destruction is very much masculine. Yang. So if we have gardened recently, if anyone gardened recently, you may still have soil under your nails that contains fragments of that mycelial network. Because when your hands are in the ground, they're in that system. The exposure, the exchange between our body and the garden is not limited to what our skin touches. There's a layer of chemistry that is happening in the air directly above the soil. When our skin bacteria are exposed to the soil, microorganisms increase their metabolic activity. Kitties adventuring around, and release volatile compounds into the air around us. Some are antimicrobial, some are anti-inflammatory, and some are absorbed back into our body through our skin and lungs as we breathe the air above the garden bed. Researchers have studied the airborne microbiome of gardening environments and have documented measurable transfer of microbial metabolites between soil, air, and human tissue during outdoor work. So the boundary between us and the garden, or the forest, or any place, we tend to think of, right, the garden is just a space where we grow food, but the garden is all of Mother Earth. It's not just, that boundary is not just between point of skin contact, it's also in the air. And the exchange runs in the other direction also. So when we kneel in soil with bare skin, hands, knees, and feet, something measurable happens within our blood chemistry within 30 minutes. Our stress hormone, cortisol, drops. Our heart rate variability, which is the intervals between our heart rates that become more changeable. And that is a marker of parasympathetic nervous system activation. It means it brings us down out of fight or flight into rest. So our body shifts from stress mode into recovery mode, and our systemic inflammation decreases. The mechanism is not physiological, it's electrical, because the surface of the Earth carries a mild negative charge. It's a reservoir of free electrons maintained continuously by the planet's electrical activity. Roughly 5,000 volts of lightning strike the Earth every minute and deposit electrons into the ground. So Earth's electron reservoir is continually replenished. That gives us the Schumann resonance. The surface of our body accumulates a mild positive charge through metabolic oxidation of our food and stuff, and then with constant surface contact with synthetic materials like rubber sole shoes and carpet and plastic chairs. So we walk around all day slightly positively charged relative to the ground and stressed because of that. Touch our bare skin to soil, and electrons flow from the ground into us through on the voltage gradient. And these electrons that enter our body are free electrons, and that is what neutralizes the reactive oxygen species that drive oxidative stress and inflammation. Oxidative stress is basically like rest on tools in our body. So a free radical is a molecule with an unpaired electron in its outer shell, and the unpaired electron makes that molecule chemically aggressive, and that aggression pulls electrons from our cell membrane, our proteins, our DNA, and it damages them structures in our body faster than our repair system can fix them. A single free electron fills that empty shell, and the radical is neutral. So inside every cell in our body, while we garden, something is happening to a clock we did not know is running, that we didn't have no clue is running. Every chromosome in our body, all 46 of them in every single cell, roughly 37 trillion cells, is capped at the end by a structure called a telomere. A telomere is a repetitive sequence of DNA that does not code for any kind of a protein. It's a protective cap, like the plastic tip on a shoelace, that prevents the chromosome from fraying or fusing with its neighbor. So every time one of our cells divides, the machinery that copies our DNA cannot quite reach the very end, so a small piece of the telomere is lost with every cell division. And so year by year, division by division, our telomeres get shorter, and that's a sign of biological age. Below a specific critical length, the cell then receives a signal to stop, and so it dies. So telomere length is a biological countdown written into every cell of our body. Longer telomeres correlate with cells that still have divisions left to spin. And guess what? Sunlight regulates this. But we've been told to be scared of sunlight, right? Ultraviolet B radiation from the sun hitting our skin during gardening triggers the synthesis of white vitamin D. Through our liver and kidneys, the vitamin D gets converted into a hormone that rebuilds our telomeres. Gardeners who spend regular time outdoors have measurably longer telomeres than birds who don't, of the same age. also, this is the direct effect of sunlight-driven vitamin D synthesis. So our biological clock runs slower when we're outside with our hands in the dirt. The atoms we shed into the soil will be drawn up into plant roots. So the tomatoes we pick in August contain atoms that were part of our skin in May. And the atoms from the tomatoes that we ate are in our skin, and we will give these back to the soil. This is the circle of life, and this gardening is the one place where you actually touch the circle of life. Think about that. The tomato and the vegetables you ate contain part of you, and then part of you that contains the tomato and the vegetables and fruit you ate goes back to the soil. We're not separate. And that the whole religious farce of the garden, we were cast out of the garden, just tells us the story of separation. So our bodies contain roughly 7 billion atoms. That's 7 to the 27th power. And not one of them is permanent. Every atom in our body gets replaced every 7 to 10 years. The atoms in your skin that are there right now were not yours a decade ago. They were somewhere else. They arrived to you through the food you ate, the water you drank, the air you breathed, and they will leave you the same way to become part of something else. When you kneel in the garden and push your hands into the earth, you are accelerating this process. You came from this soil, and every carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus atom in your body was cycled through Earth's crust and her communities before it arrived in you. The difference between you and the garden is not a boundary, it is seed. You're not preparing to enter the carbon cycle someday. You have been in it since the day you were born. If you have a garden, the soil contains atoms that were part of your body last month, and your body contains atoms that were in the soil last year. So you are becoming the garden, and the garden is becoming you every minute of every day. And so, again, the religious farce of we were cast out of the garden is just that, because we're not. Right? So on that note, let's, I'm always getting more and more divine truth downloads. So let's talk about this concept that we're speak, right? The cosmic laws that govern us, which is the song of space-time, how light writes reality. So the fundamental theorem of calculus sings the universe into being through frequency and vibration. So this is the first law that governs us. Everything is frequency and vibration. Before there was space, before there was time, there was light. Not the light we see, but light as pure information. This light wasn't traveling, it was spinning, encoded in pulses of energy called quantum state vectors, or QSVs. Each was a rotating arrow of light, and we know from the I Ching that there were 8, also from the Mayan story of creation. Mayan gives us 7, but the I Ching gives us 8. 8 of these rotating arrows of light. Each of these rotating arrows of light, spinning at exactly the speed of light, held a direction, a tempo, an angular frequency, and an intensity or amplitude. They weren't just arrows, they were songs. Each one an original note in the grand symphony. When the notes overlap, constructive interference gives rise to structure, like stars, particles, atoms, thought, and memory. Destructive interference forms the silence of the vacuum, the emptiness of space. This eternal composition is not played in space. This is played not in space, it's played in singularity. And science calls this Hilbert singularity after a dead white guy by now, sure. Maybe he's still living. So this singularity is not a point. It's a field. It's not a dot. It's a field of all possible quantum states. And so then this gives us the second law. All is singularity or oneness, consciousness or mind or psyche. And we've talked about before about the psyche.
Mm-hmm.
In quantum biology, then, this is quantum holography. This is the canvas from which reality emerges. It's not random. It's breathtaking precision. The event horizon, okay, so we have singularity. Now we have event horizon. So we now are going into polarity.
Mm-hmm.
The event horizon on the surface of the black hole is not a wall, it's a screen, not metaphorically, literally. It's a holographic surface made of qubits, which are the smallest meaningful units of information in the universe. Every spinning QSV from singularity is entangled with one of these qubits. And as they spin and expand outward, they project their encoded information onto this holographic screen. This projection is carried out by a radiation, which is called Hawking radiation after Stephen Hawking,
Mm-hmm.
which spins at the speed of light. So here we're still in polarity. Carrying information, and it collapses the wave function of every tick of Planck time. Planck time is named after Max Planck, right? In doing so, it leaves behind a perfect lithographic imprint, a record of the geometry and probability of light. The imprint then is what we experience as reality, which is a time dilation, a gravitational curvature, a quantum probability. All are encoded in the reflection. So the information field, the fabric of reality, the great singularity, is composed of light and radiation, the yin and the yang. The field is not just the observer and projector of the universe, it's also its computational substrate. Because radiation travels also at the speed of light, it experiences no time dilation. So from its experience, everything is non-local and entangled across all of space-time simultaneously. As it projects across the observable universe through entanglement, it gives rise to local effects like space, time, mass, and form. Through lithographic lensing, the sum of all decoherence resistance histories onto the holographic screen of the event horizon. So every single thing that is decoherent, that is resistance to decoherence or going into chaos, gets projected, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the shape of the imprint left by the radiation tells us how space curves, where particles will appear, and how likely a quantum event is to occur. It's how we know what's inside a black hole without ever seeing inside, by analyzing the reflected light that's encoded with mass, spin, and charge. And Lao Tzu said, the Tao, or from the Tao comes the two, then the three, and from the three, the 10,000 things come. So what's the three? Mass, spin, and charge. This is a reality painted by light and radiation, the yin and the yang, from the inside out. Every bright shimmer in the world is a derivative or place where light is changing most rapidly. The shape and form, then, of reality is the integral, the accumulation of spin and interference across time. The integral of spin gives form and volume. The derivative gives motion, energy, and structure. So light doesn't just illuminate, it computes. What we see now is not reality the way we believe it is. It's not solid. It's a spinning interference pattern, a field of light encoded on qubits. Your brain, through quantum resonance, in its microtubules, and we haven't even talked about this yet, that's a whole new subject, a whole new rabbit hole, performs a transformation of that interference. It integrates the angles and the rhythms of spinning light and projects the holographic image that we perceive in front of our eyes. So when we look at sparkling water, the glint of light is the derivative or place. Derivative would be the calculus term, right? Place is the word we know. The sharp change information and the gentle curves of the water are the integral projection. So the sparkle is telling us where the light's rhythm is changing the fastest. The shape of the waves is the sum of the slow collected sum of all the shifts of life. That's how we see. That's how reality becomes visible. And that's how our consciousness reads the code of the universe. So time is an angular frequency of our own QSVs. We all have QSVs inside ourselves. The faster they spin, the slower our time flows. When they spin at light speed, time ceases. So gravity is not a force pulling from a distance. It is the curvature of space formed by the interference pattern that is you and me. And when spin changes rapidly, the derivative increases and we experience acceleration. The stronger and tighter the frequency, the deeper the gravitational curve. So the geometry of space arises from the rhythm of light itself. The singularity is space, the space of all possibilities. The event horizon is its integrated projection, a lithographic record etched in light. So from these encoded 2D patterns, two-dimensional patterns, our 3D world arrives or emerges. And so here's the next law, the law of polarity or two-ness, the yin and the yang. And the next law would be the law of three-ness, because without us to observe, without you to observe, there would be nothing. Without me to observe, there would be nothing to be observed. Inside our brain, QSVs spin, and when their rhythm aligns, the interference is constructive, and consciousness emerges. We're awake. When they decohere, we sleep. So we are not a byproduct of matter. We are a resonant frequency in the quantum informational field, the great singularity, the great polarity and singularity, as is every tree, rock, animal, bird, and blade of grass. So we are the song the universe sings to recognize itself. But not all rhythms survive. Most decohere and fade. Only those whose spin cycles match prime numbers remain coherent across time. And these are the prime frequencies that form the periodic table of the elements, the architecture of atoms, and the structure of DNA, and the stable rhythms of thought and memory. The rest dissolve back into the sea of energy, the silence of unrealized possibility. So when someone dies before their time, sit down and figure out, before we think they should, sit down with their name and numerology. You're going to discover that they had a decoherent spin pattern that didn't match a prime integer. And now I know a few people whose names, because our name gives us part of our spin, whose names do not match prime integers, and they're nearing 70 and or so, and maybe even 90. And my thought for that is that then we get into the Chinese 5-element theory, that we come from 5 elements, and they're probably getting the rest of their spin from the 5 elements of the person they're with that's complementing them. And if they're not with a person that's complementing them, they're just going to decohere. I have no philosophy to back that up, but that's scientifically, right? So if the universe could be written into a single line, it would say that reality is a sum of all decoherence resistant quantum frequencies, each one defined by its amplitude or its likelihood, its angular frequency or its spin, its wave vector, its direction and phase, its starting point. So together they interfere and overlap into the projection of all that we see, feel, and become. Amplitudes are probability densities, angular frequency becomes energy, wave vectors describe momentum and geometry, phase encodes entanglement, and so the sum of our history becomes an integral. The singularity is not distant. The great singularity is not distant. It is here, encoded into the quantum rhythm of our being. The event horizon is the mirror of the world we see projected through time, spinning out our experiences moment by moment. So I recently heard a new that thing that I'd never heard before that makes total sense, which is that the masculine or the yang frames the feminine, female.
Mm-hmm.
So the great singularity is the yin, and the Hawking radiation projection would be the yang. And everything we see, everything that has physical structure is actually very masculine. Even though I'm in a feminine body, my structure is masculine.
Okay.
Because that's the framing of the feminine. Her ideas, her thoughts, and this takes us back to the story of Ishmukane as thought woman. That's great, right? So it's given me a whole new way. But the bottom line is that we're not just observing the universe; we are the light that sings it into being.
Mm-hmm.
We are the yin and the masculine form, whether we're a feminine body or a masculine body. We are the yin, the great idea singing form into being. So then let's go to the most effective insect killer.
Okay. What is that?
Well, it's not discovered in a pressurized can under your sink or in your tool shed. It's a flower. And for more than 200 years, it protected homes, barns, market stalls, and entire armies from biting insects. It slipped out of American life and memory for a simple reason, because you cannot patent a daisy. When nature offers something a corporation cannot own, we must forget about it. The pyrethrum daisy's story begins on the dry hillsides of Persia and the Caucasus Mountains more than 2 centuries ago, where white and red petal daisies bent into the wind. To the eye, they were nothing special, and yet to the people who lived among them, they learned from these daisies. They learned that if you dried the flower heads and ground them into fine powder, that powder would kill insects, fleas, ticks, lice, mosquitoes, and more. So for generations, this recipe traveled along the trade routes out of Asia. Merchants called it Persian powder, and later it simply became insect powder. By the late 1800s, it had reached Europe and America, and you could walk into any drugstore and buy it by the tin. Grandmothers dusted it into mattress seams. Soldiers shook it into their bedrolls. Shopkeepers puffed it along the base of their baseboards, and it worked better than anything we have ever invented since.
Wow.
But by the early 1900s, chemists couldn't leave it alone. They wanted to know what it was in a daisy that could drop a mosquito out of the air. So in 1924, 2 chemists finally cracked the puzzle, and they discovered that there was a family of 6, the active ingredients were a family of 6 compounds they called pyrethrins. The pyrethrins strike the insect's nervous system within seconds. So we're talking about a flower that paralyzes an insect faster than most of the synthetic sprays sitting on our shelves today. The part that made the chemists sit up, however, was the other half of the picture. Those compounds that are devastating to a fly or flea are gentle to mammals. So a review of the natural pyrethrins recently said they're lethal to insects, but yet with low toxicity to people and pets. And that is nature's perfection. There's one quirk. However, in that natural pyrethrum breaks down fast in sunlight. So outdoors, a treatment might last for only a day before the sun pulls apart this damaging chemical, right? This molecule. Indoors, it lasts for far longer. So the thing that made the natural pyrethrin safe is what doomed it. By the late 1930s, the world had a problem, a war, and the demand for the daisy exploded. But the flower grows well only in a few places, and the power fades in the sun, right? So the supply could not keep up, and the chemical industry set out to build a replacement in the lab. Between 1938 and 1941, there were 75 different patents filed in the USA for substance to replace or stretch out the natural pyrethrins. On March 11, 1949, the USDA proudly announced the first synthetic coffee, a man-made imitation of the chemistry inside the flower built to survive sunlight and to be owned. By 1954, a chemical company was selling it at an industrial scale, and for most of the 20th century, the daisy faded into the background. The flower farms that survived mostly moved to the highlands of Kenya, which is still our source of natural pyrethrum today. The synthetic versions are not as harmless as the natural, of course. Decades of heavy use have pushed insects to develop resistance. And then in 2020, a major scientific review that decided that the ecological harm caused by synthetic copies of natural pyrethrum was really bad, and the natural flower substance should once again take the lead. So it's called a Dalmatian daisy. It's a hardy perennial that does well, or a pyrethrum daisy. Does well in a sunny spot with well-drained soil, and once it flowers, we cut the blossoms. When they're fully open, hang them somewhere dark, because remember, their power fades in the sun, and dry to dry. And once they're dry, we grind them into a powder and use the powder, or if we want to use it as a spray, we steep a spoonful of the powder in warm water with a drop of dish soap overnight. And then we spray it where it's needed the next day, but we wait till the evening, so it works through the night before the sun comes up and pulls the molecule apart. And pyrethrum is really genuinely toxic to cats and fish, as well as to insects. So we can't use it on cats for fleas. For some reason.
Oh man.
Maybe because they're so small. I don't know. Yeah. That doesn't make sense. Why? Yeah, that to me doesn't make sense. But I know
fleas are pretty tough. I mean,
yeah,
that's not an easy thing to. I wouldn't see them dropping with just the smell of a flower.
Yeah, I mean, it might. Yeah, I'm curious about that. I'm very curious about that, because all our mammal bodies are made the same. So why would cats be? I can see maybe fish, but anyway. So let's now transition to the Taoist arts of the bedchamber.
Okay.
From that. So the Taoist tradition speaks of 3 gates that are central to erotic alchemy. And when stimulated with reverence, each becomes a portal of power and union. The first is the gate of jade, the female genitals, which form a multi-layered temple of yin essence. It's not a mechanical space. It's a living intelligence. And when touched with slowness, warmth, and conscious breath, the gate awakens not only arousal, but a current of rising chi. It opens naturally when the heart is soft and the breath is deep. And this gate is not to be rushed or conquered. It's to be invited to open. And, as we've talked about so many times before, our current sexuality really rushes that gate. And soft sighs or vowel tones can help it open. The second is called the gate of life, which is the male genitals, which carries outward the jing of generations. And this is the site where heaven's energy seeks to descend into the world. Through semen retention, breath control, and pelvic awareness, the gate of life can be trained not to release energy, but to recycle it, recirculate it inward. And so the penis is now no longer a sphere, it's a flute of chi, conducting the current between lovers and the spine. So light pelvic contractions, men, synchronized with inhale and spinal lift. Is what opens this gate. And then the gate of destiny that both men and women have is what's called the perineum. And I was taught in nursing school that the perineum was the whole thing. No, the perineum is the spot between, in women, the vagina and the anus, and in men, it's the spot between the scrotum and the anus. It's called the gate of destiny. And it's the meeting point of the yin and yang channels. It's the pivot point between the physical and the energetic body. It's the threshold point between downward leakage and upward refinement. So gentle perineal contraction on inhale and release on exhale awakens this gate. So beyond these three gates are additional orifices and portals that support whole body resonance, subtle body awakening, and the integration of sexual and spiritual currents. Number one is Mingmen, the gate of vital fire. It's located on the back of the body, directly opposite the navel on the spine. It's physically about lumbar 4, lumbar 5. It's exactly where we in anesthesia put the needle for spinal anesthesia. And if your Mingmen is low, we're going to kill you when we put a needle there. Just that simple.
Yeah.
So the Mingmen, or gate of life's radiance, is considered the source of the body's inner fire, and when warmed through synchronized breath or gentle spinal undulation, the Mingmen ignites the internal alchemical furnace. During intercourse or even self-cultivation, you would gently arch and relax the lower back while breathing into this point, and that would be the cat-cow of yoga. Would be the way to warm the Ming. So then there's the yin tang, the spiritual eye, which is located here, but it's not just there. It goes directly back into the brain, which is a subtle gateway to inner vision, intuition, and cosmic perception. During sexual union, if the energy is drawn upward and the climax is refined rather than released, it may tingle or pulse or feel open. And this would be the sign that Shen is awakening and the body is beginning to perceive more than pleasure. It's perceiving the Tao itself. After orgasm, you bring your awareness to this point and breathe into it as if receiving light. So in a single, but in a partnered practice, a prolonged eye gazing can also activate it. And then there's Lao Gong and Yong Kwang. Lao Gong is right there. The center of the palms, and Yong Kwang are right at the balls of the feet. These are minor gates of qi exchange, and when hands are placed on the chest, belly, or genitals with intention, the Lao Gong acts as an amplifier of qi transmission. And the souls, the Yong Guan, anchor the practice to earth, especially when standing or kneeling. So rest your hands on your palms on your partner's body in stillness. Focus on the breath. Feel energy flowing center to center, not surface to surface. And then every orifice, the eyes, ears, mouth, anus, genitals, can become a portal of qi movement and spirit transmission. During sacred intimacy, these gates open both outward and inward. The mouth speaks, but it also breathes and intones energies. The eyes gaze, but they also send and absorb Shen. The skin is touched, but it also senses qi. So when all orifices are opened with presence, invite it, the body becomes a temple of ascending and descending energies. Spirit can move, the Tao can enter, and the union becomes not only erotic, but revelatory, however you want to say that. So all of us that go and take ayahuasca, we can achieve the same thing through focused sex, basically. So then there are sexual points and sacred zones, and these are acupuncture points that are not meant to be pressed aggressively or activated like a button. They're meant to be touched gently, infused, breathed into, and infused with awareness. Think of them as ritual bells that, when touched with reverence, ring through the temple of the body. So the first is the perineum, Hu Yin, which is called the root gate of union. It's the energetic foundation of the body. So during foreplay, place a nice warm palm with attention here to awaken the body's inner fire. The next is Shike or Shenke. It's the navel, the portal of prenatal qi. This is actually a forbidden point in acupuncture. It's never to be needled, but it can be used energetically. The navel is not a scar from birth. It's a resonant portal to the prenatal field. It connects, which is the great singularity. That's the prenatal field. It connects to the belly's deep core, and in sexual practice, it stores warmth, gathers breath, and serves as a point of energetic centering. Solo or partnered practice would place a hand over the navel while breathing together. So solo, you place your hand over your navel and you breathe. Then there's deep arousal and jinn regulation points. And these are located 3 to 4 finger widths below the navel. There's 2 of them, and they're critical in regulating sexual energy. Gentle massage or rhythmic pressure from the partner's hands or lips of energy infused breath can awaken profound pleasure and restoration here. So during sexual union, breath and awareness drawn to these points can deepen sexual connection and anchor arousal in the body's core, preventing leakage or mental distraction. Number 4 is the heart center and emotional resonance. Located at the center of the chest between the nipples, this is the meeting place of breath, emotion, and spiritual feeling. During intimacy, this point opens with eye contact, vocalization, and touch. When neglected, sex remains purely physical. When engaged, the heart begins to radiate and arousal transforms into love. So palms resting on each other's hearts with slow synchronized breath opens this gate. And also touching here during sexual union deepens emotional safety and builds Shen resonance between partners.
Wow.
So then there's the crown of stillness, the spiritual union, located at the top of the head. It's the highest point of the body, and it's known as the gate of heaven. It's where energy ascends when orgasm is retained and the spirit is refined. This is not a point of stimulation. It's a point of surrender and expansion. During moments of stillness or immediately after union, drawing breath and attention to the crown can lift Shen to merge with the Tao. And signs of activation are tingling at the scalp, waves of lightness, or feelings of ego dissolution. And each point is a bell. We're not to strike them. We are to listen as they ring. Each gate opens a layer of the self, from the rooted body to the beating heart to the crown of spirit. And to touch these points is to touch the Tao within form. To breathe into them is to remember that pleasure is not separate from presence, and that when the body is honored like this, it reveals itself as a map of heaven and earth. So as we honor the universality of the human subtle body and the unique qualities of male and female energetics, we can support each other's alchemical process, deepening both pleasure and refinement. So the male body is fast rising, outward, upward moving chi. This is a reflection of the Yang principle that is active, ascending, and prone to dispersal. Sexual arousal in men is often intense and concentrated in the genitals. Without training, this energy peaks rapidly, leading to ejaculation and the sudden loss of both arousal and inner power. Left unchecked, this tendency can cause premature ejaculation or over-release of Jing, energetic collapse, or fatigue after climax, and disconnection from emotional and spiritual centers. So the male then must focus on grounding internalization and upward circulation. The goal is not to suppress desire, it's to contain it and direct it. So men, you can retain and recycle Jin by contracting your perineum and drawing energy up your spine. You anchor awareness in your lower dantian to stabilize and center your arousal. And finally, use breath and stillness to cool and circulate the energy rather than discharge it. With practice over time, then the male body becomes a cauldron of steady fire, no longer dominated by release, transformed into a source of spiritual strength and radiance. The female body is deep inward and expansive chi. And this is reflective of the yin principle that is receptive, nourishing, and expansive. Arousal begins in the periphery and gradually enters the inner gates of the womb, heart, and spiritual centers. Because the female body is more conserving of Jing, orgasm does not lead to a loss of vitality for her. However, energy can be leaked through emotional exhaustion. So without cultivation, a woman can feel drained, not from climax, but from emotional entanglement or incomplete energetic closure.
Wow.
So begin warming with massage. Men, you can do this, or women, you can do this for yourself, or gentle sound to awaken chi in the lower body. Practice pelvic suction and inner breath work. And with practice, the female body becomes a well of yin power that is intuitive, magnetic, and capable of spiritual depth and healing. So yang stirs the fire and begins movement. Yin receives, expands, and returns it in deeper form. However, the Tao doesn't fix these roles between men and women. It offers possibility through mutual awareness. So we have to remember there's always the seed of the yang and the yin, and the seed of the yin and the yang. So men and women, we take this. Sometimes it could be the yang in the woman that stirs the fire. But the mystery at the heart of sexual union is not domination or surrender. It's reciprocal alchemy. So then each body becomes a mirror, a conduit, a vessel. And through honoring differences, we awaken to a shared unity.
Wow. That's a poetic and powerful stuff. And didn't leave me. I wanted to make my comment on the gardening thing, where that's all the technical information that I learned from a friend that is very necessary. So you can get told about something like, for example, oh, gardening is good for you. Oh, yeah, we feel it, we know it, but it's not until you really get this information that you kind of like open a door and it just sinks in a lot better.
Yeah.
Even if you already knew it, right? Because I already knew it, but then it's also necessary. It's not just enough to get this technical information. You also have to know it and experience it yourself.
Yeah.
I've had that opportunity where I used to have my garden when I lived in the rainforest, and that was like my joy was the garden.
Yeah.
And it's like almost like if they were all my, the plants were my kids, and I didn't have kids back then, so they were my only kids.
Yeah.
And that was the saddest thing when we had to leave, and I had to just abandon my garden.
Yeah.
And then I had a friend that used to invite me to do gardening at his home, and I would accept, and he would even pay me to go. So I was double reason to accept.
Double blessed. Yeah.
And we would, work hard and plant stuff, but the main reason I would go was because it was a healing, therapeutical thing.
Yeah.
Just touching the earth, and you just explain how that works, which was amazing. I just wanted to make a comment about that. So here it is. This is the information that we need and that we are searching for, that proves all these things that is out there and that you might know slightly, but then this information is that key component, and we're going to bring a lot more information. What are we going to research for next week?
Well, next week we're going to start with the greatest drug on earth that we can imbibe in every day, and what it does to the inner part of our body, our innards, that we've been told to fear: the sun.
Okay. Oh, that's important to talk about.
Yeah, it is.
I also really like the daisies, the daisies information. Which is wow. I want to go get some daisies now.
Well, last week we talked about the American beautyberry that can't grow in Colorado, where we're going to start Udallville Bug Societies, but the pyrethrum daisy will grow in the high desert of Colorado. So in Oklahoma, we'll grow American beautyberry, which grows naturally here. But we'll cultivate it on our farm so that we can supply all of our Udallville Ugg societies with American beautyberry for mosquito and other protection. And then in Colorado will grow pyrethrum daisies.
Yeah.
That's things like that will become kind of, what makes us gives each Malika, each society its distinction. What we can grow that's similar, and what's not. Well, we can supply you with from Oklahoma American Beauty Berry to rub into your skin for mosquito protection, but for others, we'll supply you with pyrethrum.
Yeah, that's why it's important to create a web of different nations and
Yeah.
ecosystems.
And I don't know what plant we'll talk about next week, but we will.
Okay. Alrighty, so that's it for this conversation then. Join us next week as we talk about the sun. And please visit Aloha Aini Dao Living. That's .com. Share it A with Aloha and Aini. And please leave us a comment if you've been watching this about anything you wish and anything you think. And join us as soon as you are ready to step into the next stage of your life and of humanity. Thank you for being with us, and see you next week.
Yep.
Oh no, that's a new one.
I have
It's a
7 of
pretty-
them.
Oh wow, how old are they?
They're right about 2 weeks now.
Okay.